Hey, everybody. Hi, everyone. Hi. How was the snowball fight? Yeah. Okay, good. Welcome to our panel. I know it's right after lunch, so thanks for sticking with us. My name is C.V. Viverito. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the Director of Global Impact Programs with Out and Equal. Short brown hair, white shirt that says trans rights, very colorful pants. I'm actually going to turn it over to our wonderful panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves, and then we'll jump right in. So if we could start with you, Weena.
Thank you, CV. Hi, everyone. Weena Ekit here, pronouns he, him, from Manila, Philippines. I'm a Vice President for Strategy and Program Management at JP Morgan. Happy to be here.
What up, people? Y'all out there? I knew you were there. My name is Will Lewis. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for Experian. Again, that they didn't really do a good job. For Experian. There we go. I'm a black man with a beard, wearing a blue shirt and black pants.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. My name's Hannah Schwab. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a vice president in global supplier services at JP Morgan Chase. All right. Thank you. And I am a white woman with mid-length brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy blue blazer today.
Awesome. All right, so we wanted to get this started in a little bit of a creative way. So we're going to ask for a little bit of your participation. It's after lunch. We're jumping right back in, right? So by a show of hands, has anyone in the room ever felt burnt out, whether now at a previous job, but if you can clap so we can raise the energy in the room, if you felt that way. All right, so we're all burnt out. Thanks for still being here. Okay, how many of us have felt that way due to a lack of a sense of belonging? Like you couldn't, part of it at least was that you didn't feel that you could really be your full self at work. That was part of it for you. Okay, slightly less claps, but still a lot. And how many of us have ever felt that because of that feeling, it made you at least consider, at least ponder, at least wonder about leaving your job? That's a part of burnout, right? That's normal. And that really brings us to today's topic, and how inevitable of a topic when we have a panel on the Great Resignation to talk about burnout, right? Because Great Resignation, quiet quitting, this is essentially burnout rebranded with big consequences. And just to do some level setting on what we mean, it's actually quite a global phenomenon that's been going on for the past few years. Actually, a lot of the studies will show you that resignation rates were on the rise pre-pandemic for almost a decade. But with the start of the pandemic, it was really a very strong catalyst. And actually, resignation rates had hit, at least in the US, but in other places as well, a low by April 2020, because people were very fearful to leave, of course, with great reason, and then skyrocketed at an absolute all-time high by March 2021, so within a year. And just as a caveat, this is not including the very devastating impacts of COVID where people had lost their jobs. This is voluntary resigning, right? And actually what the data also shows us is that 2/3 of those folks globally left their jobs due to increased stress and trauma. It was not worth it anymore. We were going through some times, we still are. These are the consequences, right? And we see this in the US, in Europe, in India. Over 1 million IT sector folks resigned. And in China, they have a movement called Tangping, which is essentially lying flat, which is also quite a similar movement that we're seeing. So it's all over the world. And we want to be really mindful of the fact that certain industries are obviously hit harder and have a lot more stress. People with certain identities have more emotional labor that they bring to work that they're also dealing with on top of everything else. So it affects us disproportionately, and we've seen that as well. But just jumping right in, we've got a lot of interesting folks on this panel with different perspectives here, and we want to hear from them. So starting with you, Weena and Will, what have you seen, not only in your companies, right, but just in general, what have you seen around the world? How are these trends showing up in your life, in your work?
The Great Resignation predominantly resonated in the U.S., right? But it's no different when you go outside, like UK, LATAM, and Asia. The difference, though, with LATAM and Asia is there is kind of a spin-off to it. And I say that because we don't come from a place of privilege. Poverty, we have always been woke with poverty, so we are resilient. So whatever headwinds comes to this third world countries, we are able to adapt. So how did we see the Great Resignation really, or did we see a lot of fallouts? I wouldn't say not as much as US, because it's not like we have the privilege to leave the jobs that we dislike, right? We had to stick by it.
Yep.
We have bills to pay. We have family to feed.
Yep.
So it's very difficult at that. So I guess in turn, what we have done is there were certain countries who obviously were able to adopt it in such a way that there are certain industries that sprouted, like online, retail, everything, right? You may have lost your actual physical job, but you are able to now get an online job because the online platforms have boosted. I think pretty much that's how we saw it outside the US.
Interesting.
You know, I tend to look at these things in a historical perspective because history tends to teach us what will happen in the future. So if we think about back during the industrial era or 30s, 40s, 50s, in the United States in particular, but certainly in some other countries as well, there was this rise of factory work, right? You saw migration from different parts of this country to other parts. But then what happened through that migration is there was this idea of treatment. Employees start saying, I want to have protective equipment for my hands, for my fingers. They had family members that were losing parts, limbs and things. So the rise of unions came about, right, to help protect those employees as a part of that. What's happened here in America over the last 20, 30, 40 years, there's been a shift from some of those blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs that aren't necessarily protected by unions. And so over the last 10 years, to CV's point, we began to see more people say, well, you know what? This idea that my grandparents had that I should stay at this same job that I started when I was 18 and retire when I'm 65, that doesn't work for me anymore. And if they're not treating me the way I want, if they're not giving me the mental health support that I want, if they're not allowing me to be the way that the way I feel on the inside, I'm going to leave. I'm going to vote. I'm going to show my displeasure, not through unions, but by leaving and going to someplace else because someone else will take my skills. And I think if we continue to look at history, it'll tell us what's going to happen next. And that's from a macro perspective. That's really what I see as a part of it.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, and it totally aligns with a lot of the data that we're seeing. What are people looking for? One of the first things people are looking for now is, do you have DEI? Can I be myself? And we're seeking it, right? It's our natural. We want to be ourselves all the time, and we're too tired not to be. And so, Hannah, if I can turn it to you. And being out and equal, we're going to talk about belonging, right? So how is this shifting in a way or forcing us to update and adapt what we mean when we say cultures of belonging, and how does that intersect with all the different identities that we have at work?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And, I've heard the phrase over and over again of it's not about being invited to the party, it's about being asked to dance. And it's not about either of those. It's not about being asked to the party. It's not about being asked to dance. It's about being invited and help with the planning from start to finish, being brought in from beginning to end, right? That's inclusion. That's belonging. And you're right. When you said a moment ago, that's a huge thing that everybody looks for when they're looking at a new company, right? Is can I be myself there? But not just can I be myself, am I going to be supported in being myself there too? Do I have the benefits that I'm going to need? Can I put my pronouns out there? Okay, great. You can be trans, but we're not going to support that, or we're not going to, use the right pronouns for you. Like those are the things that people look for when they're trying to find a new job.
Right.
And that's so key to being able to show up and be your true self every day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And there's a whole new layer to it now. Now we're all trying to figure out, hey, Out and Equal, this is our first hybrid summit. So hey to all the people listening in virtually. But this is a new piece of our reality now, this remote revolution as well. And this ties in to how we experience our sense of belonging. This ties in to how and which ways we're feeling burnt out. And so, Will, how are you finding, or how do you think the remote revolution, if you will, this kind of increased need for flexible hybrid environments is affecting how we feel that belonging at work?
Hi, people, remote out there. One of the things that we've really learned along the way, and the pandemic, I think, has accelerated what was already happening, is that people wanted the flexibility to be able to work from where they are for whatever their reasons are. And those reasons run the gamut, right? What we've seen over that period of time is that now people are, employees are telling their employers, I'm not going to come work for you because you have this rigid, I have to be in the office from Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 or whatever the case is. And by the way, we're talking about certain kind of jobs, because there are some kind of jobs like service jobs where you have to be there to get the job done. So we want to be sure that we're delineating between the two different kind of jobs we're talking about. What's really important, I think, for employers that can support those employees that have the option from working from home is really being sure you spell that out and make it clear that that's one of the benefits of working for your employer. Like I think about my company, Experian, for example. We made this decision towards earlier this year that we weren't going to compel anyone to come back in the office that didn't want to come back in the office. That includes our contact centers, that includes our support staff, and things of that sort. If you work from where you want to work, whether that's from home, whether that's a hybrid where you're in the office part of the time or working in the office full time. But I do think that there is a side effect of that we all have to figure out as employers, and that is how do you continue to maintain that culture and that connection, particularly for individuals that are early on in their careers, right? I think about myself when I first came out of school and joined the workforce. Some of the friends that I still have today are people that I met at work. That are people that I connected with. Now, you can make those connections virtually, but you have to be a bit more deliberate about how you do it and how do you learn from those individuals. So we have to work, I think, as employers to create that environment where individuals can create that connection in the workplace, and you can maintain a company culture and organization. I don't think anyone's quite cracked the code on that yet, but it's talk about looking at history to predict the future. That's the item that we should be looking at. And I can assure you that at the conference within the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot of sessions around how you maintain your culture and how do you ensure your employees feel valued and understood as a part of this journey between the ways we work.
Yep.
Do you mind if I add to that
Please
too?
do.
Because I think when we talk about it, I love the way you talked about that too, Will, because it's really about the company also being able to react to that. There's a lot of reasons why someone will want to work remotely. And there's a lot of those reasons that impact or come from our community as a whole as well, right? People early in their transition, maybe they don't feel comfortable going to the office yet. And that might not be because the office is or is not, welcoming. Maybe the office is the most welcoming place ever. Maybe it is. But maybe that person is still, very eggy and very, early in their transition. And they're just not ready to be in front of people, right? Or maybe they, have dysphoria about maybe they don't want to turn their camera on when they're at home. There's a lot of reasons. It's not just because I want to sit on the couch and watch the TV while I maybe move the mouse around a little bit. I don't do that anymore. No. But I mean, you're right. I mean, when it comes down to it, right, it's about the company being able to react and make space for those needs that everybody has.
Yeah. Did you want to add at all?
I think when everybody was talking about unconscious bias for every firm, right?
Yep.
When we all reverted to what we'd say the effect of the pandemic, it has now been conscious inclusion. It shouldn't be more of, because I felt that unconscious bias is more of a physical thing, because you could inadvertently be really biased on something, but conscious inclusion really comes from within. Meaning you have to be empathetic, you need to know these people, you need to connect in certain ways that are not visible to you. I think that was one of the adjustments that we had to do, and the companies would need to be conscious about. So overnight, we had to train most of our managers, executives, etc., on how to be like that, for us to be able to turn around certain decisions, for us to operate still in an inclusive and belonging way.
Totally.
You know, and I think there's just one other thing that goes around to conscious inclusion. I think it's a conscious effort that not only the employer has to make, but the employee has to make to kind of drive those relationships along the way as well. So think about this. Think about the past, for those of you that are old enough to recall, think about in the past 10 years, how the world of dating has changed, right? That there was this time when you were dating that you had to go to the bar, or you met somebody at a dinner party or other places along the way. And the majority of people meet their new mates now through online interactions, whether that's through an app or whether that's through sliding into someone's DMs. Y'all don't do that though, but
We know what apps you're talking about.
Some of that DMs.
or whatever the case is. So the workplace has to continue to move forward in that way as well. And that's a part of that cultural shift that we have to catch up with. What tends to happen is we lag behind until people are voting with their walking papers, right? Mm-hmm. Well, why wait till that long? Like, we know this is happening. We all see it. So but I don't think it's wholly on the employer. I think as employees, we also have to speak our mind and share our piece around what we need to help us along the way.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you all so much. And there was an important caveat that we all just made, which is the privilege that comes with being able to make this decision. Of course, this is a privilege. It depends on your industry. It depends on your situation. A lot of us don't have the ability to great resign or quiet quit when we have families to feed, when we have college debt, when we have bills to pay. That is a very important caveat that we should be making and intersects greatly with identity. But we can't have a great resignation panel without mentioning quiet quitting, because what you'll read now is it's kind of this new phase of the great resignation. And I think it's really interesting, and I also think it's a misnomer. Again, it's burnout rebranded. The term became popular on TikTok. But what I find really interesting is during the great resignation, when we were all suffering, a lot of our companies were telling us, hey, take a break, practice work-life balance, take a walk. This is a 9 to 5. At 5, try your best to turn your computer off, do what's good for you. And those are important messages. What happened is that this year, 60% of Americans took vacation for at least a week, which was up 44% from last year. And yes, that has to do with travel restrictions, but that's still a huge percentage. It's also the highest percentage that has ever been recorded since the survey started in 2009. So on its best day, quiet quitting is work-life balance. On its worst day, it's not. But it's still an interesting thing that we see. And when I mentioned that it started on TikTok, way back when we would hear about burnout, you would hear you're burnt out 30, 40 years into your career. That doesn't mean burnout wasn't happening earlier. But that's when we heard of it. But now we're hearing of folks that are entering the workforce, they're already burnt out. And I want to wonder why that is. So Hannah, I want to ask your opinion on that. Why do you think we're seeing younger folks feeling so burnt out?
Yeah, it's a good question. We ask a lot of young folks. We ask a lot of everybody, right? I mean, but especially our younger folks, right? They have a lot more energy. I also don't. When did I go from not being one of the young folks? Also, when did that happen?
That's why I'm asking you. You're
Okay.
one of the young
Thank
folks.
God.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, they have a lot of. We ask so much of so many people, and I mean, you see the statistics all the time, right? Housing costs are up, insurance costs are up, inflation is way up, right? And pay is pretty steady, unfortunately. So we ask a lot of people, and what are they getting in return? Right? And that's a lot of work. Even when we talk about BRG work and ERG work and all of the stuff that we do here, it's taxing, right? This is how we've heard throughout this week the terms day job and gay job, right? And my passion job is my gay job, of course, and my day job, of course. But to be able to do that and be able to split your time and be able to do both things, but you're going to still end up, and maybe your needs are still not being met. Yeah. So I understand why people are quiet quitting or going as far as resigning, because if your needs are not being met, I can't expect you to stay. And I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna work my ass off to get your needs met. But if whether it's a benefit, whether it's a medication or something that you need to be covered, and it's gonna take me 6 months, a year, 2 years to get that covered, I'm gonna fight like there's no tomorrow, and I'm gonna work with our Office of LGBT plus Affairs, and I'm gonna get that covered. But I can't ask you to wait 2 years or however long it's gonna take just to get that coverage. You need to do what's right for you, right? What do we always say? Fix your mask before helping the child next to you. You got to take care of you first before before we move on. So
Does that really happen, though? Do you really fix your mask before the child next to you?
I haven't been in a plane crash, so
Oh,
I don't know. Just personally. Yes, knock on wood.
Yeah, well, to your point, I think there has been an increased awareness around self-care, mental health, emotional well-being at work for this very reason. And so maybe there's a positive outcome to that. And Will, I'm wondering what you're thinking. Like, what is this telling us for the future that we need to be focusing on?
Yeah, I think there's two things, and you mentioned the study that showed that up 44% people have taken a week off of work this year as opposed to last year, and maybe to travel. So, but I like to deal in the land of reality, and the reality is with most of our employers, we have the option to take time away. Time away doesn't necessarily mean getting on an airplane or getting on a train or drive someplace. It just means disconnecting yourself from work. And I think we have to get comfortable with disconnecting ourselves, because the reality is many of us can't afford to get on an airplane to go travel anywhere, or aren't in a position to do that for whatever our personal circumstances are. So we have to acknowledge that first, but also say, just because you can't afford to go on a fabulous trip to Miami or to Vegas, doesn't mean, and some of our virtual listeners are in that situation. They would love to be here in person, but they can't because of that situation. But that doesn't mean that you can't take time away from work. And maybe that time away means finding resources through your local library, or going to the botanical gardens, or just sitting outside in a park that's in your community that's near you as well. What it really means is we need to normalize this idea of taking time to support yourself, and then recognizing when things are happening around you that are becoming overwhelming, and becoming comfortable with telling folks that, right? So an example, maybe if you're in a situation, whether with your family or at work, and you're like, my gosh, I've been going for the last 9 months, and I haven't taken time away. Not only do I need to take time away from work, and that week can be at home in the park or whatever the case may be, but it also may mean that I need to take time away from that relative that I live with who's annoying me. And instead, I'm going to go stay with my friend across town, because that's the mental space you need. And I said that in jest, but there's also this situation, and this is an important one that I want to touch on. There's this idea of, there are some people that are hearing the sound of our voices that are in unsafe situations, right? Either because of domestic violence or abuse or unsupported families. And so work is their getaway. And so what happens is they become mentally overwhelmed with work, because that's their escape from this. What I would encourage individuals that fall in that situation to do is to say, what can be my escape with little cost? By the way, there's a whole other segment that we can do on domestic violence and talking about ways of coping and the resources out there. I'm not going to touch on that right now. But that escape may be a friend or a relative or sleeping on someone's couch, because it's better than the situation that's at home. And also it gives you that time to separate and decompress for your own mental illness. Be okay with taking care of yourself and thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a good point to add there is, it's good that you touch upon it, Will, about their personal circumstance that are really, truly personal to them, domestic violence, etc. When we shifted to that setup during COVID, places like Hong Kong, where their housing setup is really small, right? They found working in office much suitable and more productive to them, but then we weren't able to give them any options. Similar to other countries who are just pretty much in a shanty setup. Wi-Fi is not working well.
Right.
So no matter how you would like to be really productive, and obviously your efforts are not being seen, the company can only extend so much appreciation or understanding, but at the end of the day, I don't know if they could give you so much time to be understood, given your current situation. So,
Exactly. And let me ask you all, if this is the opposite, if burnout, if great resignation, if quiet quitting, this is essentially the antithesis of a happy, engaged employee, when are you most happy and engaged at work? If you don't mind sharing with us. Give us some ideas of how we can be happy and engaged. And what does it mean, practically, like what resources and people and allies and supporters at work do you have that we need at work to make us happy?
I can start off with answering that question. So, to your question, what makes me happy and what makes me, go to work is obviously the feeling of being part of something big, being respected, and truly be allowed to be my authentic self. I think that in itself is something that would truly make me happy to come to work. And I was reading one of the article that says the Great Resignation is a crisis of belongingness. I don't know if everybody here agrees. It was an article on Fortune by Anthony Dillard where he specifically mentioned that in this day and era, people go to work not specifically just for promotion, salary, etc. It's also because of their social relationships. Mm-hmm. So I think that also sprouts their want to come to work. Mm-hmm. And if you take that out and you leave them to being alone, not being seen, not being heard, not mingling with everybody else, then that happiness to truly do your work starts to dwindle down. Mm-hmm. So I guess for me, it's really just anything and everything so long as I'm part of something big.
Purpose, yeah.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth when you said being part of something bigger, right? And I'm very much a people person, so being able to collaborate with others, so being part of something bigger than yourself and really together working towards a common goal. That's what's most fun for me, I gravitate towards the co-op games when I play games because I want us to work together as a team towards that goal, right? That's where I'm most happy and feel most fulfilled when we can work together towards a solution.
That's a complex question for me because one of the things that I think about many of us here today is that we have our own intersectionality that's at play, right? We're a part of, I feel like I'm going in and out.
I think it's
Maybe bring it closer.
I feel as if we all have these different parts and components that make us ourselves, whether that's our gender identity, our religion, our race and or ethnicity, and our disability status, our veteran status, and so on, right? And for me, I'm passionate about all these things. Many of these intersections are a part of who I am as a part of others. And I thought about this some time ago. I was sharing with a colleague of mine this morning. She and I were talking, and I started saying, what really makes me happy? Do you all want to know? I just want to be sure you're still awake. Are you with us?
Woo!
Woo! Okay, all right. So the front two rows are with us. Let me ask the people in the back. Are you all back there? Oh, okay. Like, what really makes me happy is giving access to others, right? Helping people who didn't have access to something and bringing them into the fold where they now have access. Helping people reach something where they didn't have that ability to reach it before. Helping them strive for what their goals are when they didn't even realize that was a goal or that was an opportunity for them, right? I think there are so many people out there that don't realize the potential they have or realize that there's this opportunity, there's a chance that they have. What they need is somebody to give a vote of confidence, to help support them along the way. And I think that's what each one of us can actually do here today, right? As you leave out of this room and as you think about the course of the next 7 days, identify one person who just needs a vote of encouragement. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say take 20 seconds right now and think about who that one person may be, or you may not know that person. Maybe you interact with them on the plane on the way home or something. But who's that one person that you can change their lives by just telling them it's okay? It's okay to go after your dream. It's okay to start. And I think for me, that's my driver, is how I can give access to more people to whatever access means.
I really love that, Will. It's really, yeah. Actually, going off of that, I think I'm going in and out. I'm good. Going off of that, you're flipping the script on us, right? This is how do we turn the great resignation into the great opportunity? What can we do? Because we can give this any name we want. And so to have the glass half full, and I'm going to borrow from our friend Alok Ved Menon, who says, our community has the ability to make pride a riot and a riot a party. We can flip the script when we are facing challenging circumstances, and that's not to say that challenging circumstances don't disappear, because they won't, but we can work together to figure out what we can do to help each other and support each other. And as business leaders, to help our companies support our employees, to support each other, support our communities where we live. So how are we going to make this the great opportunity? We know what challenges we're facing. We've spent the past 30 minutes discussing them. What are some practical things? And this can be on the individual level, friend to friend, as you were saying, or maybe even on a policy level, a practice level. What have we learned? Do we need a more hyper-personalized workplace? Do we need greater investment in our ERGs and our DEI initiatives? If you all don't mind sharing just some practical guidance that we can take away today to make this, to come out of this better.
Well, let me start by wiping my tears away from what Will just said. So
Yeah.
I think when it gets to the point of talking about resigning and the Great Resignation, I think that really represents a form, I see it as a form of collective bargaining, where people have really shown that their needs are not being met, and they're not going to put up with it, and they're going to leave.
Right.
And that's it. And so I think as companies, as leaders in our companies, we need to recognize that. We need to listen. And I think from an individual level, going back to what Will said earlier, if your needs are not being met, speak up. We don't get things done unless we speak up. Don't just leave without telling why you're leaving, because other people might be going through those same things, right? And so it's a lot, and that's a big burden to carry. But if your needs aren't being met, somebody else's probably aren't being met either. So I think it's twofold: speak up for what's not happening, and and as companies, we need to listen.
I think from a broader strategy, the success of the company lies in the success of its people. I do believe that. And I recall this because before we all came back to office, one of my people then said, Wina, I'm putting on my papers. So I said, why? Because my wife was offered a global mobility. So we need to move to the US, etc., and it has to happen fast. So I'm like, okay. So my initial reaction was like, okay, so you're going to be moving from Philippines to the US, so there's practically no way for me to see if we could employ you. Though the instant answer there would be, hey, I come from a global company, then maybe that's something that I could do something about, right? But during that time, I need to check and see, am I being inclusive of thinking what else I could do for this talent? Or I was just dead set on, okay, he's leaving, I need to replace him. So it was a decision I had to make that I wouldn't say I'm perfect. I didn't approach it the right manner. I had to put on my business hat and continue on with the business. But I started contemplating. So even up to now, actually before I flew in here, I was still trying to communicate with him, trying to get in, to check and see, because we just came off of work from home, regardless of what location you are in the world. If you're able to deliver and process what the business needs are, I should be able to hire him back. So even though my realization was late, I had to make sure that I am an inclusive leader. So as an answer to your question, CV, I think we need to equip more our managers to not just be inclusive in many ways, but to be aware, empathetic, and sympathetic about a lot of the circumstances that faces their people. And they have to be, like what Will said, deliberate about it.
Right.
not just a checklist thing, not just because, oh, it's part of my metrics as a manager, I need to be inclusive, I need to talk to you, I need to hear your personal story. It's a check off of my box. It has to be deliberate, sincere, and you have to be empathetic about it.
So what practical tips can we give to navigate this brave new world? I'm going to tell a secret. Listen closely to the story because the secret will be in there. What I do is I create my personal board of directors. And in that personal board of directors, I have several types of individuals. Someone that's a truth teller, that'll tell me the truth about myself when I'm screwing it up and I'm in my own way, right? I have someone that is better at whatever it is I'm trying to do than I am, that I can learn from how they're doing it and hopefully become inspired. I have someone that's going to be my cheerleader, and when I'm at the point where I don't or I can't or I don't know how, they're going to cheerlead me and give me that extra little pep that I need. I also have individuals that are networking connected as a part of my board of directors that they may not know it, but they know how to get others as a part of it, right? And some of those people are really close to me that I talk to frequently in a week, and others are ones that I talk to twice, 3 times a year, but they're still individuals that add value along the way. And most of the people that, by the way, that are on my board of directors don't know that they're on my board of directors, that I listen to, right? And so my friend and colleague, Abigail Lovell, who I can see back there right now, we were working on something over this past week or so, and I thought something was really, she's like, I don't think that's a good idea. No, that's not good. Let me tell you why, And she told me why, and she was right. It wasn't a good idea. But what was important is she didn't feel as if, let me just go along with this. She actually said, I don't think this is a good idea. And I think as we think about the practical and tactical tips that we can use to navigate this great resignation or great opportunity, is surround yourself with people that'll tell you those things or help you chart the way and help you get connected in a way that's helpful and useful to yourself. That's how you make it through. I don't think, my reality is, and actually all of our reality is, none of us made it onto this earth alone. There were some people that helped bring us onto this earth. And so as we think about how we navigate earth and how we navigate our careers, it's okay to engage people. It's okay to allow yourself to be vulnerable and to realize no matter how good you are at one thing, there's someone else that can help round you out as an even better human, as a better professional, and leverage that input to help you along the way.
I love that. I hope I'm on your board of directors one day. Okay. I know talking about the Great Resignation and burnout and quiet quitting and the pandemic, I don't want us to leave the room feeling too heavy. So I want to kind of...
Dance party.
Yes, go. Later, tonight, night out, poolside party. No, I want us all to our panel will leave us with a note of kind of hope and inspiration that we can take with us. And I'll get us started. I'm actually going to use a nugget of knowledge that I took away from Pri Bertucci, who's here today, who is the CEO of Diversity Box. Left this interesting idea with us in the Art of Being Queer panel, which is when we don't cultivate joy, find how to do that, we become sick emotionally, physically. It's not good for us. And cultivating joy, I'm not saying that that's easy. Sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes it's just a moment in a day. Sometimes it's listening to your favorite song. It's taking a deep breath. It's calling a friend. But I think that queer joy, trans joy, black joy, these things are radical sometimes in what we're facing today. So what I want to leave with you all is do your very best, and it's okay if you don't do it every day, but do your best to try to find a moment of joy in every day to keep yourselves healthy, and use that to plant a seed. Spread it to somebody else. Tell someone what you did. Don't hold the joy only with yourself. Spread it because it will multiply. Just literally tell someone what you did that made you happy that day. It'll probably put a smile on their face. So that's my message to you all before we go to Q&A, and I would love to hear from you all as well.
I guess the best advice I could give everyone to make sure that you still continue to feel that you belong. It was very difficult for all of us when we were remote, but find your passion. I think all of us here,
Yeah.
we're all here because of our passion, right? And I thank Brad for being, he's my gay job boss. But apart from him being that boss, right? He's there to listen, even from miles and hours away. I think what I do for him, because it's my passion, it's the one that motivates me to do well in my day job. So for those of you who are still confused of how do you translate or how do you do a business case of making sure that everyone sees you equally as good in your day job and your gay job, I think that's about it. Your passion should be your motivation to do well in your job, stand out, and move yourself out of that loneliness, because this bunch is going to be your family that you would belong to. So, and you're not alone. You are never alone. I think what led us to something big is because we know that as LGBT community, we have that superpower of making people laugh, of being the brightest star in the room. And I think that's something that you could also do for yourself. So find that star, find that ally, and find that peace in you that will always make you feel a lot less alone and belong in whatever circle you're in.
I can go next. Thank you, Ina. That was beautiful. This week I was lovingly referred to as the killer of dreams. So I think I often don't have the brightest outlook sometimes, apparently. So that's something I need to work on, apparently.
Well, you just made us laugh, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
See, there you go. Helping cultivate joy, right?
Thanks, Hannah.
Yes. I think I often kind of frame all of this in terms of the ERG work that we do, and a lot of times it feels like an uphill battle. But just know that, like, take a look around, and you saw the ballroom yesterday and today, and it's been since 2019 since we've been in person, and I was blown away by the huge presence of everyone in the ballroom. So I guess it always feels like an uphill battle trying to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, but remember that there are people out there that want to work together towards that common goal. It's not all hopeless. I know with us at JPMC, and we have the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs, and I know I've given that office a lot of sleepless nights personally, but it does really warm my heart, the amount of dedication they have. So there is a lot of hope out there, so don't lose that.
Oh my gosh, tell us a secret.
Now you have to make us laugh and cry, by the
I
way.
know, right? I don't know if I can do that. Mine is really simple. It's really, really simple. Just find time to laugh. That's essentially it. So what most people don't know, some probably do, is when something's really funny to me, and like really, really touches me down deep, I have this big, huge laugh that fills the room. And not only does it fill the room, if it's really funny, it just goes on for 3 minutes. And because of work and because of things, over the years, I've learned how to package that up and just kind of cut it off. And I decided, probably about 5 years ago, I don't want to cut it off. This is who I am. If you're going to hear me laugh, like it or not, and I do it. And as recently as this morning, I was on some call and somebody said something that was funny, and so I laughed. And you could see all the faces on the phone like, oh my God, he's so loud and garish. I was like, this is me, y'all, Chicago boy, here I am. Allow yourself to be fully yourself, and if they don't like it, oh well, it's their problem. Be you.
Love it. Yes. Oh, thank you all so much. We have 15 minutes for Q&A. So we've got some mic runners around the room, and we probably have some questions coming in from the audience. So if you can just, if you have a question or a comment or anything you want to share with us, if you want to raise your hand, yeah, right here.
It's on.
Hi. Oh, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Antonio. I use he, him pronouns. Thank you for today's discussion. I know something that I heard and resonated with me is kind of self-advocating for what you need in the workplace, and I appreciate that. But I would love to hear from y'all, what is the balance between what an employer should be doing to create systems or processes or an environment where folks are able to speak up and ask for what they need versus putting the full onus on the individual employee and saying, hey, this is what I need and I need help. But we'd love to hear kind of your perspective on how do you find that balance, either for you as a leader in your organization and then for you yourselves as an employee.
That's a tough balance to find, right? I mean, it's a partnership, right? You have to recognize that when we do talk about kind of self-advocating and speaking up for your needs, recognizing that somebody at your company has to help meet those needs. I think we often kind of look at it like it's a department. So, you know, a department is we have to go to. There are people behind that department that are working hard, right? And, you know, I mentioned earlier about the time frame, the time that it takes to get things, you know, accomplished. Things take time. You know, I can tell people that I'm going to work as hard as I can to get something done, but I can only spread myself so thin before I start, you know, needing more and more self-care for myself, and that's the same for everyone else. So I guess finding that balance is just about kind of recognizing and understanding that we're all people working towards the same goal. Yeah, I don't know. Weena, well.
I think there were a lot of requests or things that employees wanted employers to do during the height of all of these, right? The companies will give us their hand, and we want the arm. I mean, that's just too much, right? I think more than partnership, we gotta be sensitive of what it is that we really need. Because if your company, I mean, truth be told, if your company right now asks you right off the bat, what do you want? You will have like 100 list of things, right? Even as simple as, I just want to sit around the whole 8 hours. Could that be done? But please do not tell your company or else I will deny it. But yeah, I think it has to do with partnership. At the same time, be fair. Because the companies are always doing their best to supplement everything that the employees would need. At the same time, what would keep us going? Running the business in short, right? We would want to keep, the companies always would want to keep as much employees that they have, but if we give it full blown, then that would obviously entail a bigger risk versus them being able to really deliver. And just like what CV had mentioned earlier, there's an article that was released, if the Great Resignation could be the great attraction. How do we turn that into being a resignation to an attraction? And what the article said was, it's the time for the companies to sit with these employees and ask what do they really want. And then from there, that's where the compromise would be. So it's just really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just really collaboration.
Nothing I have to add to two great answers.
Yeah, awesome. They were. Okay, I know we have some other questions. It's hard for me to see. Let's go to this side of the room, maybe.
Me? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm John Lake. I use he, him pronouns. First of all, I wanted to thank you all. This discussion about burnout is one that is needed, and thank you all for being so vulnerable in the discussion. I have a question that is kind of inspired by the snowflake exercise earlier. I remember, and I'm a gay man of a certain age. I remember early in my career, and it was in the early 90s, my burnout came from covering, from being told that I will never make it in corporate America as an out gay man, so I need to keep that part of myself hidden. The great part of what's happened over the last 3 decades is instead of having to change ourselves, now we're working to change the environment and the cultures of our companies. And I'm wondering, as relates to burnout, that's hard work. Do you think that is something that's leading to burnout, that push for change that we see, but takes a lot of effort to make happen?
There's nothing wrong with being of a particular age. We're hot.
Yes.
I think the response, there can certainly come burnout if you feel as if you have to take the burden on your shoulders alone to drive all this change. I think the biggest antidote to just that is bringing along more volunteers or more people to help make that movement. And we've been talking about this inside of our organization around some of the things that we want to do, we want to accomplish. And the message is, gosh, it's the same 5 people that does everything over and over again, right? I mean, right? Somebody clap. Same 5 people doing it over and over again. And so the question becomes, what's standing in the way of the other 55 people from being a part of it? And the answer will vary. And so here's a tip that I would say is, instead of just trying to put up more flyers or do more advertisements or send out more emails to get more people to do it, step back for a second and ask the question, well, why aren't you joining? Like, what is it? Let's not assume it's because they're not comfortable being out at work, because that's not necessarily the case. Ask the question in the next survey, what's stopping you from volunteering to help? And then solve for what's stopping them. Once you solve for what's stopping them, it'll help you spread the burden around, which then gives you more time and space to breathe and inhale and exhale as a part of it.
Yeah. Great. Online question? Yeah.
So I'm going to read one from the chat from our virtual folks. So the question is, what is something that people can do when a challenge has been brought up multiple times and no one is able to find solutions, or folks seem uninterested and feel unheard?
That's a tough question. That's a tough question because Brad is here. My answer will be. And I mean, there's always going to be a time when you felt that you're just going around in circles, your challenges just keeps on coming and coming, and you're never heard, etc. And you feel like you're dead set to just no one is listening to you. I personally do this. I schedule a 10-minute with my manager to just get on, not solutioning, but talking about it and getting the attention. I think that's very important. Solution can come in later. But giving that joint accountability with you and someone else, that this is really a problem and it needs to be solutioned, and talk to someone who has that decisioning power, or at least someone that could help you bring it up to whoever. But it has to be called for, it has to be recognized. And then the rest will you'll be surprised, the rest will just flow it on its own. I know it's difficult. Everybody here will say, oh, my manager's calendar is too busy, they don't have even 5 minutes, etc. Be creative. Go to the restroom, wait for them there. But please don't do it. That's just a
I've
hypothetical.
followed people into their office before and said, hey, we're going to talk about this now. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is there is always time, but you need to be the one who's proactively going to do it. Do not wait for them to come to you and address it. Otherwise, you'll just end up being a whiner. So, yeah.
And I would add to that to say, I don't know a single person at our company that would say, no, I'm not going to meet with you, regardless of title level. There's some intimidation there where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to bother that person. Oh, I don't know if I want to bother them with this problem or whatever. Bother them. That's why they're there. Go say, hey, can I set up 30 minutes with you? Can we talk through this, and can you help me out with this? Great.
Yeah.
Find that time and talk it through.
And I would say too, if I may, try not to face these problems in a silo. Sometimes we know what we're trying to say, we know what we're trying to get across, but we play it over in our heads so often that the story doesn't change enough. Others sometimes need a little bit of a reframing. They have a different brain than us. They think differently. And so, Hannah and I have also just gotten on calls and just workshopped ideas. Just so use your network, ask them what they think, and when you hear a different opinion, it helps you go, I think my manager might understand it if I say it like that better. So don't face it alone. Yeah. We have time for more questions. Yeah.
My name is Colleen. I'm with Deloitte, and I am a member of the Great Resignation. I left public school teaching after about 20 years, and because of actually the pressure and the fear that I was starting to feel in the classroom after all those years living in Arizona. And I kind of gave a little spiel on that. But what I wanted to throw out, one of the things I love about Deloitte is we have a recognition program that's kind of peer-to-peer. And Will, to your point, lifting people up. I'm a little later in my career. I'm also very seasoned and attractive. And
there you go, baby.
Yes.
There you go.
And the world has changed in all those years. But that's where I see my responsibility now in my hopefully last 5 years, maybe 10, maybe 3.5. Is that can I lift other people? So what I want to ask you is, what are you doing with recognition programs, right? Because we talk about support, but how are we also giving those daily tidbits to people that bring them up? Because it's not about burnout over time; it's burnout every day now. Would anyone agree with that?
Yes.
I feel like that people are facing demons every single day, and I think we need some actual pieces in place. So do you have pieces in place that lift people every day?
I'll talk about one of the things that my previous employer, Bank of America, did. They have recognition program like the one you mentioned at Deloitte, but what they also have are recognition cards. There's a couple of different ones. They have recognition cards. There's no money, but it's an acknowledgement. Hey, this person did this for me. It goes to the person to their email. Their manager gets copied on it as well, and then their senior leadership gets a listing of everyone that got recognized peer-to-peer. You could recognize anybody for any reason, and it was one of those just kind of warm, feel-good moments that actually were really important. In addition to that, the Bank of America also launched, for people that were involved in their employee networks or ERGs, a program to recognize individuals above and beyond for the time that they gave to the ERGs as well. And so those individuals actually got recognized through a special recognition note and email that only went to their manager, but a couple levels up managers as well as a part of it. And it's sometimes, depending on exactly what it was, there'd be awards as a part of it as well. But I think that type of recognition is important, not in addition to just telling the individual, but ensuring that you shine a light on it to senior leaders in the organization as well. And that's one of the things I think they did well.
Yeah.
I think to add to that too, I don't think you need to wait for some kind of a program to be in place. I think that really helps to elevate it, but just an email to somebody's manager, to say, hey, Colleen just stood up and asked a really thoughtful question during this, really want to thank them for that question, and being able to send that directly to somebody's manager, CC them and say, hey, I had this great experience with this person, and here's why. So you don't need to wait for some kind of a formal program to be rolled out to give people the kudos, the recognition that they deserve.
Do you want to add?
No, I think they said it all.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. This is all the time we have for questions. Just want to give, let's give our panelists a big round of applause, please. They deserve it. Yes. And why not one more for all of you here and virtually. Thank you for joining us for this hour. We appreciate it. Yes. All right. Thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your summit. Thank you.